Hey everybody, welcome to Dispatches, an adventure motorcycle ride aimed at breaking down the stigma surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder in the veteran and first responder community. My name is Mike Terry. I am a 23-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, and I have been affected by PTSD since about 2001. I retired in 2018, immediately started to see the effects of isolation and withdrawal, and the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder start to really escalate the second I got out of the Canadian Armed Forces. And so I had to do something, so started to share my story and got a bike, started riding around Canada and encouraging others to share their story. And that is how we ended up here today. So, last couple of weeks been talking about anger. Talked about, managing influences that can make you angry. That's regarding social media. What happens when we project anger a little too much, or that's kind of the default setting. And again, kind of a focus on social media there. Last week I talked about asking the question, why am I angry? And as a means of letting go of anger and seeking to understand kind of the root cause of it. So this week I want to kind of continue in that vein a little bit and talking about how a technique I've found to help let go of anger kind of in the moment, or as close to the moment as I can. And that is by employing empathy. When you start to feel angry, empathize with that other person. So if you can kind of switch gears, the moment somebody upsets you and try and see things from their point of view, sometimes that can allow you to let go of anger instantly. And, if you've ever had one of those days where, everything's going good and then you just kind of run into that one person who, for whatever reason, whether you know them, you don't know them, you've had that where one angry moment kind of spoils the rest of your day. I've certainly experienced that myself. And there's nothing worse than carrying, some small incident with you for an entire day and letting it affect you that way. And certainly using empathy instead of anger, or turning to empathy instead of anger, can help you avoid experiencing that. So last week I told you guys a story about going out on a date and getting stood up and getting ghosted, and how I got angry, and through asking, why am I angry, kind of getting to the root cause of it and being able to let go of it. But there's kind of this other component that we didn't talk about, and that is assigning intention. A lot of times when people do something that makes us angry, we have, or I say we, I'm talking about me. People make you angry and you assign intention to it. So yeah, you meant to do that. So in the case of, being stood up for a date and then kind of being ghosted afterwards, having never met this person before, the mind kind of automatically goes to the point of, oh, well, she's just kind of playing games. This is a game. They're wasting my time. There's this intention to do these things and to anger me. And, so that's assigning intention. You're assigning a malicious intent to the other person's actions or inactions. And again, it makes it very easy to assign blame and to project that anger onto that person, because if their actions have malicious intent, well, then it's justifiable that you should be angry with them. So I think that happens a lot of times without realizing it. You don't think of it, you just kind of automatically do it. The human brain is wired to seek out threats, and it's wired to kind of play out that worst case scenario. It's a survival mechanism. And when by and large we don't have a lot of these survival situations to be in, well, the brain still works in that capacity even for the most innocuous things. So that might get kind of kicked into into hyperdrive, and every little thing that happens, you ever meet somebody who's, they get angry at everything and everything's a personal attack? Well, that's, you're assigning an intention to everything that happens in the world, that the world is against you or everybody's against you. And it means you can just go to anger for everything, right? So in her case, yeah, she stood me up. It sucked. And the immediate response is, oh, this is intentional. This is something being done on purpose for entertainment or whatever. But the other side of it, if you turn that to empathy, is to go, well, maybe this person just kind of suffers from crippling anxiety. Maybe this is a person who wants more than anything to step out into the world and to start meeting people and to get past this challenge. And maybe this was one of their attempts to do that, and they just chickened out. They just, the anxiety or whatever got the best of them. And that may or may not be true. It may be true that what she did was in order to get a reaction and it was intentional. But I'm going to go ahead and say that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter to me. If I hold on to that idea that it was intentional, that means I'm going to carry it with me. I'm going to carry that forward. I'm always going to remember, what she did. If I can look into the idea and go, well, you know what? Maybe she's got something going on that she's just, there's some block there for her. She can't get past that. She can't get out and meet people. It makes it easier to empathize and go, well, geez, that kind of sucks, and it's too bad, but there it is. You can let go of it. And I kind of told you that story about the dating. I'll tell you another story, because traffic is one of and I've said it before, traffic is a big, it's a big trigger for me. Bad drivers, distracted drivers, all those things. And again, I mentioned Moto Madness a few weeks ago as, my dirty little secret, as my brain candy, and watching all these close calls and motorcyclists interacting with motorists. And you see kind of most of it's anger and escalation, and sometimes it can be pretty ridiculous. But, in traffic is one place where I assigned intention a lot of the time. And somebody cuts you off and it's like, oh, you meant to do that. You're this horrible person out there just trying to cut everybody off. You made a lane change without looking, all these things. And you assign this malicious intent to it. And then you're justified in being angry at them. So one day, actually it was New Year's Eve, I was coming home from Newfoundland and I flew into Billy Bishop Airport in downtown Toronto. My car was parked in downtown Toronto. So it's New Year's Eve. I'm tired. I've been flying, I've been traveling all day. And I come up to an intersection and I'm just not with it. I'm tired. And I make a right-hand turn onto a one-way street. And not just any one-way street. Lakeshore Boulevard, which is, if you know anything about Toronto, is a fairly busy street right downtown. Now, luckily, it was kind of like 7 or 8 o'clock on New Year's Eve. There was hardly any traffic. And I make a wrong turn onto a one-way street, going the wrong way down a one-way street. And man, I feel like such a bonehead. Immediately recognized my mistake and was like, okay, damn, embarrassed. Nobody can see me, but I'm embarrassed. I feel bad. And I remember thinking, I think even before I got turned around and got out of there, I remember thinking to myself, Mike, remember this moment. Remember this moment the next time somebody makes a lane change without looking. Remember this moment the next time, somebody blows through a yellow light. Remember this, all these things that people do, makes a turn and doesn't go into the nearest lane of travel and skips the lane and cuts out in front of you. Remember this moment because it'll humble you. And, I'm not saying that it's okay to drive that way as a matter of, as kind of a matter of course. It definitely isn't, but everybody has moments, I'm a decent driver. I know I am. And I'm usually a very cautious driver, very competent, but even I can be a bonehead. It happens from time to time. And I guarantee anybody out there who's spending the amount of time on the road, you've done something bonehead once or twice. Remember those moments. And when somebody cuts you off, when somebody, obviously isn't paying attention and does something stupid, and it's maybe even if it's somewhat of a close call, just remember, everybody has moments. They could be a garbage driver. They could be a terrible driver. Again, it doesn't help you to bring that knowledge with you for the rest of the day that this terrible driver is out there on the road, because, you being angry at them is never going to change their behavior. You confronting them is just going to get you amped up. It's probably never going to change their behavior. And I know a lot of really terrible drivers, and they think they're the most competent driver out there on 2 or 4 wheels, when it's just not the case. There is a fair bit of delusion in the motoring community about people and their skills. So, you know, it doesn't have to be true that they're just having a moment. That could be their normal state of being. But if you kind of look at that as the reason for that behavior, it helps you to let go of it and just carry on. And, you know, I'm not excusing, you know, really selfish and reckless behavior. I'm not excusing somebody using their phone and distracted driving, because honestly, I think anybody who does that, same as DUI, I'm not saying, oh, he's just having a bad day and driving drunk. No, that is not the way I would view that situation. Anybody who's on their phone while they're driving or on your phone at stoplights, I'm looking straight at you. I don't care if you're my best friend. You need to stop that shit. And that's one that, you know, because there's no excusing that to somebody having a moment. That is pure selfishness. And, you know, I don't exactly have a remedy for that, that one just yet, because I can't empathize in those situations. But, you know, 90% of the time, yeah, I can. And kind of another approach, you know, you meet that person, you run into that person that's just unpleasant. And this happened, we'll say it was at a store here in town. The cashier's checking somebody out, and all I can describe this woman as, not the cashier, the client, as a crone. She's like this little old, just miserable, shriveled up lady. You know, she's going around giving apples to princesses, right? She's just a crone. She's just giving off that vibe. And she's just tearing a strip off of this lady who's working behind the register. And finally a manager comes over, grabs her, and kind of takes her away to deal with her. And I can tell that this cashier is very visibly upset. And I say to her, I say, well, you know, how's your day going? And she said, well, it was going really good until I had to deal with that woman. And I said, yeah, I could see that. And I said to her, I said, you know, it sucks that you had to deal with her for 5 or 10 minutes, you know, and it kind of ruined your day. I said, but you only had to deal with her for 5 or 10 minutes. She has to deal with herself and her shitty disposition everywhere she goes. She has to deal with her shitty attitude for potentially the rest of her life. And you only got, you know, you only had to endure 5 or 10 minutes. And, you know, this woman was kind of like, yeah, you're right. Like, thank God I'm not going through life like that. So, you know, that's got a bit of an edge to it, but there's still there's that touch of empathy saying, man, I would not want to exist in that state. And I'm glad I'm not, you know, of a mindset that's quite, you know, that's that outwardly miserable that I want to make people around me miserable. And, you know, and it's real when you look at things that way. It's very easy to let go of that anger. It's very easy to say, okay, I don't need to be troubled by this anymore. I can just be happy that isn't me. So anyway, guys, that's it for this week. The next time somebody does something to make you angry, just give that little check and say, hey, am I assigning intention to their actions, or can I empathize and say, I wonder what they're going through that makes that happen, or if they're just having a moment. And, you know, the more and more you practice that, the more you're able to do it in the moment, like almost immediately. And it's actually a very liberating feeling to know that something that would have made you very angry in the past, you're able to look at and just kind of look at a bit more objectively and say, okay, this doesn't need to affect me for the rest of my day. I don't need to carry this with me. And I'm not talking about being complacent, again, not being complacent of behaviors. And, you know, I'm not saying accepting the world as it is and not standing up for what's right. But, you know, it's that whole pick your battles thing. You know, if being angry and carrying that anger forward or applying energy to that issue is worthwhile, well, that's one thing. But if it's one of those day-to-day annoyances and one of those things that happens over and over, and you get angry about it every single time, you're gonna turn into that old crone who's just out yelling at cashiers because she can, right? And yeah, you know, you don't want that. I don't want that for you. I certainly don't want it for myself. And I don't want that to be the world I live in. So yeah, anyway, guys, that's my take on empathy versus anger. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and I'll catch you next week. Cheers.